I believe that what you're seeing is people realize that this kind of dentistry takes work. Aligners is a totally different animal. You could train a technician to scan the mouth, and the dentist sits at the computer and approves the case. Technicians put the aligners in. It's sort of a windfall for them if they do enough scale and enough volume.
So you think less people are going to be pouring into full arch, which makes it more, it's going to be less competitive over time. There's big guys out there that are like, all we do is full arch, and they're trying to do it at scale. And that's super complicated too.
I'm not worried about the guys like me. We've got the experience. We're doing advanced full arch dentistry. We're treating people right. I'm always going to have work because I'm the guy you go to fix the bad work. And there's a lot of bad work around. So I'm not really worried about guys like me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Adam Hogan, who is a practicing dentist at the Full Implant Choice practice out in Virginia, and he also has an institute. You just want to stay tuned because this is a value-packed episode. What are some of your thoughts on the current state of implant failure? So there's been a couple of different people that I've talked to on this. So number one, I've talked to dentists that are doing 10, 12 arches a month, and they're almost all coming just from failures, just other dentists that just didn't know what they were doing or those kind of things. And then I've also talked to other people who have gotten trapped, and they talked about it live on the show, where when early on they got started, they were doing a good job, but year 2, year 3, they were starting to have a lot of failures and a lot of problems that they had to go back and correct things that they learned earlier. But it took a long time for that to reveal. Where do you think we're at on the whole failure market? Oh, and plus people are living longer, right? People aren't as healthy, but they're living longer as drugs, keeping people's bodies alive, but the bodies might not be in the best shape. You know what I mean? So where do you think that this whole market's going to go with that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I think that we are at a dangerous time right now in full arch dentistry. Okay. Because it's such a buzzword. The public is aware of it. Also, by the way, the lawyers are aware of it. The all on four word. Everybody's aware of all on four, and you have consumers going to the marketplace looking for it. And then you have dentists realizing that, hey, if I want to be cool and popular and really good at my profession, I need to do it. Plus, there's a buck to be made. So there's a real big rush for doctors to get into it, and, I think it's quite dangerous to get into it without a lot of education and a lot of training and a mentorship. You need education and mentorship to be successful at this. I mean, I hear doctors tell me that they don't need to come to my classes because they watch YouTube. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, I've actually posted in Facebook before, and I asked people, I asked a question like, who's teaching these new dentists that are coming out of school? Because it wasn't about full arch. It was just in general. Who's teaching these new dentists coming out of school? Because they don't have experience. It's going to be the DSOs, because no one wants to hire a dentist right out of school with no experience. And so they go to these DSOs, and that's who's teaching them the clinical skills. And the number one comment that I got on those posts was YouTube's teaching them. That was the number one comment. Now, that was for GP. Full arch, that's crazy.
It's absolutely insane. And for somebody to say, imagine you go to your doctor and you want a facelift, and they say, oh, I didn't go to school or any classes, but I watched it on YouTube last night. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of bad all on four, a lot of bad full arch dentistry. We're seeing a lot of bad implants because practitioners are just hearing it's easy, and they think they're overconfident. They don't take the education and training that they need, and they jump right into it. They get themselves into a lot of problems. And, I don't want to get into it too much, but I've been working in doing legal work for probably more than 10 years, 12 years. And the number one mistake I see is overconfident, overzealous young people jumping into major procedures and making big mistakes. So on a revision, you're talking about implant failure, but I think you mean when the whole mouth is failing and you got to redo it. I mean, I'm doing revision cases probably I'll do about 6 surgeries a week on my schedule. And about 2 out of those 6 patients are redos. So it's very, very prevalent. I'm also seeing probably 5 or 10 times that number in my consultation room, people that haven't gotten to my surgery chair yet, but they need their work redone. And it's really a shame because, I mean, these poor patients, they could barely afford it the first time. They can't afford it a second time. They feel taken advantage of. They don't have anywhere else to turn to. They need some help. They're not getting help from the office that screwed it up, they don't want to admit their own failures or they can't afford a reimburse, whatever. It's hard for me I don't want to really get involved in their business.
Of course.
But
it's happening, but it's happening at large numbers. And that's the part that we need to be concerned about. And that's part of why I do this show. People are like, why do you do this show, Gary? It's like, we're not in exactly a great place. Like, I'm not in a good place as a marketing company because I can't help most people who want to do full arch marketing. Why? Because they don't have their operations together. Well, why is that a big deal? Well, because they're clinically not ready to do full arch. Why is that a big deal? Because patients aren't going to be taken care of. Like, that's really the root of the problem that we're facing. And it's not a little thing. There are multiple layers to it though. What are your thoughts on like how many, I'm just out of curiosity because you're on the East Coast. I'm in Southern California. So this is like very prevalent here. How many of those cases would you say are from dental tourism, people leaving the country to come back and get those fixed? Is that a problem that you're seeing at all?
Well, my friends in more metropolitan areas are seeing a lot more tourism. Okay, like New York, LA, Miami, like they're seeing a lot more people go out of state or out of country. I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Southeast Virginia. I'll probably see one or two come in each week. They went to Turkey, Costa Rica, wherever, and they need something to. A lot of people from here actually end up in Mexico. I think Mexico is the most common one in Virginia. But it's the same story. Like, it's not done perfectly. It's probably done, pathetically. It needs to be replaced. I mean, the stories that I hear from these clinics, they would blow your mind, And I have a good friend in Yuma, Arizona with a Mexican dental clinic. Don't get me wrong. They're not all bad.
Yeah.
You got to.
But the consumer has no way to weed out the good from the bad. It's impossible for them to weed out the clinically good and bad, right?
You can't bet them. And I've heard stories from, we went to this clinic in Mexico and I thought Dr. So-and-so was going to do it, but I didn't meet him. He wasn't there. This other kid did it. But, I've heard like I showed up in the waiting room and I said, no, it was unsanitary. It was a mess. It was a chaos. I said, I'm not doing this here, and then I've had people, they come back and they're terribly infected. And, Mexico says, well, fly back down here, give us another $10,000 and we'll fix it, and they've already tried that probably once and it still doesn't work. So, I mean, by consumer, buyer beware. If it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. If it looks too cheap to be true, it probably is too cheap. So you gotta vet the experience of where you go. I mean, revisions happen in the United States too. I mean, we're seeing a lot of kids, young guys get into this. They spend a lot of money on marketing and they think they're going to be an all-on-4 treatment center. And I have to painfully redo a lot of their work as well.
Yeah, and this kind of leads into another topic that I've seen that's pretty prevalent, and dentists fight about this a lot online, and as well as like marketing companies and stuff too. It's like being the cheapest, right? And being like using that as a marketing technique is like, I'm just going to do as many arches as I can, as cheap as I can to market to get new people to come to me. And then there's people who are like, no, we need to, keep the pricing together. You need to be able to charge a premium for this because you have liability, you have the cost of all this. Like it's expensive to do full arch. It's still not like some things have driven down the price, but it's not like driven down substantially the way some people thought it would be a couple years ago. So where do you fall on that? It is a spectrum too, right? Like obviously the price is elastic depending on what market you're in and those kind of things. Where do you fall on that spectrum of like, 30,000 an arch, 10,000 an arch? Like what do you teach people?
Yeah. Well, I've seen this go down big time in the last 10 years, where it used to be, oh God, like 80,000 an arch, like, yeah. I mean, I'm serious. There was a day where it was 80,000 an arch, 1,000 an arch. And, but back in those days, we weren't fully digital. We were putting a lot more time into it and not everybody was doing it. And now, competition, technology has dropped that cost because it's easier in a lot of ways. So dropped it down to 50, 60,000 for a full mouth, or maybe less. But then this whole competition factor, these people that go, well, I want to be big in the game and I want to do more than the next guy. So I'm going to keep lowering my price. And there gets to be a point where, you start trying to save money on materials and implants and equipment, and you don't stay up to date on things, and you don't take time with people, and you rush through and through and through. I mean, and that's the only way that you can afford to do this kind of dentistry at such a low price. And, I mean, I believe that there comes a point where that dentistry is total crap. I mean, it's not good. I mean, if I can say that on your show, I mean, it's just not good dentistry at some point. I think technology allows us to get it down maybe to, $18,000 to $30,000 an arch, depending on, where you're at in your in your practice.
And your speed, and how many you're doing, right? The economy of scale does come into play and those kind of things,
Yeah. If you're doing 30 arches a month, maybe you can afford to do one at 10 or 15, but can you afford to do 30 at 10? I mean, I'll say this much. I have had to redo a large number of cases from people that they went to Las Vegas or as a big one where it's like 8,000 or 12,000 an arch, or there's place in Austin and that people from here flew out to, and I'm redoing their cases. Guess what? I call the office. It's not even open anymore. And like they didn't even survive 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to start to see a lot of these places go out of business, and this race to the bottom, as they call it, where everyone's trying to undercut the next guy and become the big man. I think we're going to see it start to play out in the next 3 to 5 years, where people are going to realize, look, full arch is a lot of work. And there's a huge liability to it.
Yep.
There's board issues, there's litigation, there's lawyers, there's attorneys, there's bad reviews. My practice is going south. I can't afford to pay my bills. And they just get out of it altogether, just like we've already seen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that actually leads into my next question is like, what's the future look like? Because it's interesting. It's like for a while there, it's like, implants are going to bazillions of dollars as a market share because every single dentist is going to be placing full arch in the next couple of years. They kind of looked at it like, I kind of feel like people were projecting almost like it was aligners there for a while, where it was like, every office is going to be doing aligners. And that kind of came true, right? Like most people ended up doing aligners of some nature. But full arch it looked like it was maybe going to go that way for a while, but then it's like, no. It's way more complicated. And the risk reward actually isn't there the way people thought it was. So what does the future of full arch actually look like from a total market standpoint?
Well, I believe that, what you're seeing is people realize that this kind of dentistry takes work. I mean, aligners is a totally different animal. You could train a technician to scan the mouth, and the dentist sits at the computer and approves the case, and then technicians put the aligners in, and it's sort of a windfall for them, if they do enough scale and enough volume. Although I'll tell you, there was still a lot of liability in that too, because they were over treating and not supervising correctly. And I think you're going to see a lot of that similarity with full arch, except to say that dental implants, and specifically the prosthetics that go on dental implants, is labor intensive. It's work. And yes, I mean, I can train my chairside technicians to do a lot of the redundancy in it so that I can do scale and volume, maybe for a more competitive price. But I still have to maintain intense supervision and responsibility over those cases. So, I sort of see this like, it's super popular right now, and they say everybody's going to be doing it, but we know in reality, in 5 years, it's still going to be the cream of the crop, dentists that are doing it. And in order to maintain sustainability in your practice, you're going to have to be good. I mean, there's a dentist in town up here, he's kind of tracked me for 20 years and always copied what I do. And, his reviews do this every year, because he doesn't take time with people. He's not good at prosthetics. And, mine continue to do this. And, you can fool people. You can fool the general public for 3 years or maybe 5, but you're not going to fool them for 10 or 20.
Yeah. Yep. So you think less people are going to be pouring into full arch, which makes it more, it's going to be less competitive over time. What about like the big guys that are doing this? So you see the DSOs trying to tackle this. I won't say any names, just, I don't know if we'll get you in trouble or not, but there's big guys out there that are like, all we do is full arch, and they're trying to do it at scale. And that's super complicated too. I will say they've done a good job with certain marketing. They've done a good job with, reducing complications because they're just focusing on one thing, which is interesting. Some of them have reverted back to wanting to do more things because they struggled there for a bit. But what are your thoughts on the bigger guys out there and where that's going to go? Is that going to continue to expand and get gobbled up? The guys like you are going to continue to pop up and approach it from a different angle.
Well, I'm not worried about the guys like me. We've got the experience. We're doing advanced full arch dentistry. We're treating people right. We're only doing enough. I'm not trying to do 100 arches a month. I'm doing 20 because I can do 20 really, really well and still have a great life at home. I'm always going to have work because I'm the guy you go to fix the bad work. And there's a lot of bad work around, you know? So I'm not really worried about guys like me. I mean, to be honest, as I count around the colleagues in this country, there's probably in the hundreds, not thousands, but in the hundreds of guys like me. Okay. So it's a very small, crop of talent. As far as the DSOs go, we're already starting to see what I've predicted in the past. There's not a lot of profit margin in dentistry, and these big equity companies, they're looking for big returns. And because they're sucking profits, because they're not allowing dentists autonomy, because they're not, just purchases. I know doctors in full arch DSOs, and they're not allowed to order the implants and MUAs that they need for the case the day after tomorrow because their equity investor is trying to squeeze margins to make the company be sellable, more profitable, have more EBITDA and more profit, less expense. So doctors are fleeing those models. We're already seeing it sort of turn around. These equity companies are getting more into injectables and Botox and things where they've got much higher profit margins. Anybody who works in full arch dentistry knows that while your profits will grow, your profit margins will shrink. So it's very hard to have somebody come in above you and start skimming your profits off and still keeping the dentist happy and the patients happy and everyone well serviced. And we're already seeing a turnaround of that where these DSOs that only do full arch are now, I mean, I won't name names, but they're pushing, hey, do more dentures, do more overdents.
Yep. Yeah. I saw that as well. Yeah. For a while there, they were just only full arch. That's all we do. And then now they're starting to change their tune a little bit because they just couldn't get enough volume to do what they wanted to do.
Exactly. Because all they care about is the bottom line. So, and it's not about the patient. It's not about the doctor in the box. It's about the profit coming out and how much they can squeeze out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Now let's talk about your school a little bit. So who's the ideal person for your school? So there's a lot of people who's going to listen to this show, and some of them are going to be, in different places in their life. So in their career, so who's the right person that you guys can really help?
Well, to be simple, really any dentist can benefit from this because even if you're not going to practice full arch on a daily basis, you probably should know about this kind of dentistry and that it exists and when you can refer it to somebody else or how to better service your patient. But, we've got modules that allow beginners, intermediates, and advanced full arch people to come into, based on your own experience. So if you're already involved in full arch and you want to take remote anchorage, that's fine. But I'm really trying to build a program for the beginner. All right. For the guy or gal that needs to get all the way through. So in 2025, I've consolidated our modules as one continuum to take throughout the year. So you can go from beginner to intermediate to advanced all in less than a 12-month period and make sure that you don't miss any education or training in full arch. And by the way, that includes labs like exocad design or characterizing and staining 3D printing teeth, milling final zirconia. It involves cadaver lab training. So, you come in on fundamentals for 3 days, and then on the fourth day, you stay and we do cadaver training. And we do the same thing for remote anchorage. So this continuum can get anybody proficient in full arch in as little as 6 months. And for those that want hands-on training, I do one-on-one training at my office. And we also have a live surgical training available in Guatemala.
That's so cool. You got a lot of stuff going on. So if someone wants to reach out and learn more about what you're doing and connect with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
simple way, go to the internet, go to Google, www.theatlanticimplantinstitute.com. You can find our phone number, message us there. We're also all over social media, the Atlantic Implant Institute, where you can send me a DM and we can chat online.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and just being transparent, open about what's going on in the full arch world. I learned a lot. I know our audience did as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing the production.
Yes, sir.